Alright everyone, it's time to talk about more problems with gun control. Some people don't make, I think, proper arguments. Like, they just say, oh, from my cold dead hands, and so people are like, well, you're a gun nut. And the label sticks, at least for people on the left and some of the centrists. Like, I may know better. Like, I have no problem with people who want to collect guns. They have a bunch of ammo lying around. Okay, you're properly storing it. You know how to use your weapons. You're a citizen. You're not a subject or a slave. Yeah, you should be able to own those guns. I don't feel intimidated when I see somebody open carrying because it's dumb to live your life in fear. I'd be much more afraid of the person who's not showing the fact that they're carrying their weapon because they're a gang member, they're murderous in some way. So they want to conceal it. They're not going to walk around with an AR-15 strapped to their back because then it attracts attention. Gang members typically use handguns. You're also more likely, by the way, to be killed with a hammer or a knife in this country than you are to be shot to death. Little known fact that is borne out by FBI crime stats. Gun crime as well is at a 40-year low in this country. All these mass shootings have always happened. There have always been such events. When people who are older say, oh, it never happened when we were kids, bullshit. Yeah, it did. Look at Kent State. Oh, that's right, it was government forces shooting students at the time, so it doesn't count. Look at Waco. We're saying, oh yeah, let's burn this home down with all these kids inside. I'm not going to bother keeping on the negotiations because we really want this crazy cult dude to die. Let's make sure to bulldoze all the evidence within 2 days. I'm sure that won't attract any suspicion at all. Not to go off into tinfoil land or anything. But there's a bigger problem with gun control that relates to the United States. A lot of times people point out, like Australia, they say, well, their give up your gun sort of program kind of worked. Gun crime is down in Australia. You know, violent crime overall is the same. It hasn't gone down. It's just people use other weapons. Like if someone's murderous, they don't need a gun to go commit murder. Generally speaking, they can conceal a knife, walk up, stab the person in the kidney. Okay, you know, for them, I guess, problem solved. They got off. They did what they wanted to do. And they're going to do that regardless of your anti-weapon laws, your disarmament laws. There's a bigger problem, though. Australia is an island. It has no land borders. What do we know about the United States? Some of these people probably don't understand geography. The U.S. has two very, very long land borders. It is impossible to properly guard the entirety of the southern and northern U.S. borders. It's impossible. If we were to pass comprehensive disarmament, what would happen is that other states that want to make money and that do arms sales would gladly sell to the cartels that are active in the U.S. They'd gladly sell to the gangs. You know, they're competitors anyway, so they want violence to be here. They'll still have guns. They'll still be firing at each other and at the police. In fact, they'll be more out of control because now you can break into someone's home. Hey, I'm not going to get shot. You know, the person might come at me with a knife. I've got a handgun. What the fuck are they going to do about it? 9 times out of 10, I win. And so it's a free-for-all of crime. You would see so much more property crime in the United States, by the way, if this were to happen. People also overlook other things between, parts of Europe which are more disarmed, or Australia, Canada, places with, Canada actually relaxed its gun restrictions a bit, and it didn't seem to cause a skyrocketing crime rate. It seems that just people have more guns. The overall rate of like murder and assault is roughly the same per capita, so it didn't cause an epidemic of crime here. I mean, there. I say here because Vermont is basically, southern Canada anyway, for the most part. Politically and socially, I will say. Although we're closer to French-speaking Quebec than we are the English-speaking part of Canada, which is hysterical to me. But here, if you were to disarm people, the criminals would have guns, the cartels would have guns, anti-government militias would probably still obtain weapons. They'd be getting them from the Russians or the Chinese or something. Maybe buy Israeli weapons, they would still be armed. And see, there's the problem. You've disarmed all the law-abiding citizens because they're the ones that'll give them up. Also, the left always talks about, well, we're concerned mostly about like the paranoid, the right-wing crazies. They have a lot of guns and do like survivalism and stuff. Okay, who is more likely to actually give up their gun to the happy federal agents that come to their door to disarm everybody? Who's more likely to give up the weapon? The person who ultimately is ambivalent and has no out there beliefs and is like, well, it's just another fucking government policy I have to deal with. Maybe not happy about it, but I'm not gonna do anything about it because I'm afraid of getting like shot by the soldiers or something. Or somebody who is paranoid already about the government thinks the New World Order is coming. No, that person is either going to start firing the second that their door is knocked on, which means high casualty. You'd probably see millions of deaths if you actually attempted to implement martial law-based disarmament. And the government would probably lose, by the way, because it would be vastly outnumbered and outgunned just by people who have that kind of belief. Where you're talking tens of millions of end times evangelicals. Oh, it'd be a bloodbath. They'd probably win. You'd probably have a theocratic U.S. when you were done, and all these liberals that want gun control would get exiled to Madagascar. The other thing they could do is just say, hey, I'm going to take a lockbox, put my handguns in it with the ammo, bury it underneath my garden, and when they knock on the door, I'll say, oh, I don't have any guns. You know, most of these weapons aren't registered anyway, so how the hell are they supposed to know? They'll just say, oh yeah, back in the straw sale days, I just sold it to one of my neighbors. Here, go knock on his door. He has my handgun. And then that neighbor, who's been coordinating with them all along, says, no, I don't have it anymore. I shipped it off to Joe in Alaska. Go check Joe in Alaska. They're going to lose track of so many millions of firearms, it's not going to do anything. And they'll all be in the hands of criminals and paranoid people. Wonderful. You've disarmed 90% of the public, the 90% that's totally law-abiding and doesn't have any fringe beliefs. Meanwhile, you've got a bunch of evangelicals who think the end times are here, and they're willing, trust me, they're willing to fight tooth and nail. Militiamen, anti-government or otherwise, racial gangs, non-racial gangs, drug cartels, and crazy people, psychopaths, literally. They're all still armed. Yeah, they're going to have a free-for-all because now everyone else is disarmed. They can go kill at a whim. The only thing that'll be standing against them is the police. The police will be too busy with like the gangs and cartel side. You probably would have to have martial law for years and years thereafter to have any semblance of peace. Guerrilla warfare would erupt. Even private citizens that don't have out their beliefs would end up getting indoctrinated because of social alienation. The country would probably collapse. Australia didn't have the same kind of culture that we have currently with regards to weapons. And by the way, the Second Amendment is fairly clear here. The Second Amendment cannot physically pertain to the U.S. military. Or to an organized militia in the sense of something government centralized or co-opted, like mercenaries. It can't apply to them. It can only apply to private citizens, because at the time when it was penned, there was no standing military force in the United States. There were some mercenaries that had been hired to fight. There were mercenaries. There were defectors, maybe, you know, some regulars said, oh, you know, I want to be here too. I'm tired of wearing this fucking retarded-looking red coat. Other than that, it was farmers and masons and carpenters and lumberjacks and sailors. Even private civilian, like fishing boats were equipped with cannons in order to go to war. Here in Vermont, to prevent the British from sailing down through our wonderful lake system, they built a makeshift navy out of several ships. The Green Mountain Boys constructed some ships and actually held the British off. And by the way, to all the pipe dream pro-disarmament folks that say, well, you wouldn't stand a chance, your gun will do nothing against a tank, as before, which I said. It's all about fuel supply, energy, and things of that nature. Trying to suppress millions and millions of citizens when you can't even deploy most of your weapons because they cause too much destruction. You're trying not to destroy your own country, especially when you'd have to deal with massive military defection probably in the first place. Like a lot of dudes would not be willing to carry out such a command. They would know that it countermands the Constitution and they've taken an oath to uphold. A lot of the police would end up probably defecting. You would not prevail. You wouldn't prevail specifically because the proponents of disarmament are all disarmed anyway. They don't have any guns, or at least very few of them compared to the people they would be opposing. How are you going to maintain the fuel supply for all those tanks and drones and planes when every fuel depot is probably under attack by anti-government militias that would use it as an opportunity to sow chaos? How are you going to manage to police any population when the majority of that population thinks that you're scum and that you're trying to enslave them? It's simply impossible. You also got to talk about the difference in population itself. You're talking about hundreds of millions of people in the United States. You're not talking about Australia and their relatively sparse population where, for a lot of the countryside, it's not a whole lot going on. About 90% of Australia is totally deserted. And they can still say, fuck off, we're full, because all the arable land is already occupied. So, you know, Sucks, I guess, to have such a situation. Yeah, we live near the coast. That's about all you can do in Australia. What about some place like the UK? Well, the UK, another example of something that's surrounded by oceans, in fact. I suppose if Ireland ever got rid of all its gun control, maybe militias there could supply it through North Ireland, maybe. Now, that's not going to happen because they're in the EU, so, sucks to be them. Yeah, it's not going to happen. In fact, if I had to guess over the next maybe 10, 20 years, I think there will be less gun control in the United States, not more. Now, I don't think, even if you had Democrats running the House and the Senate, and a Democratic president, like Obama had for the first 2 years he was in office, won't be any overtures towards gun control. It's too unpopular an issue. It brings us too close to chaos. They know that it won't actually do anything. Now, we've already got probably excessive gun control in the country already in accordance with the Second Amendment. The gun control that we do have probably violates the Second Amendment too. I say probably because ultimately in a pragmatic sense, in a philosophical sense, of course it does. In the sense of pure pragmatism, the courts tend to lean on the side of, yeah, but it does work to have citizens not owning crates of hand grenades and machine guns and stuff. And that's basically the justification used. That is, technically it is a counter to the Second Amendment, but it works and hasn't caused enough social stress, I think, for them to take it up as an issue. Like, they just won't hear any cases. They might force them to make a decision that repeals, like, old firearms acts. They just don't want to touch the issue. I think the next step is we probably will get the Hearing Protection Act. I think it hasn't already passed, so that suppressors will be legal everywhere, and they should be. That's not a firearm, it's an accessory for a firearm. It's no different than saying, oh, well, you can't buy a laser pointer, you might put it on your pistol. So, okay, that's dumb. Doesn't make any sense. It's not a weapon. Can be. If it's a laser pointer on steroids, you can certainly bring down a plane with it. See, I'd think that'd be a bigger problem. Energy weapons at this point are probably a bigger issue than the sort of solid ordnance we're used to associating with small arms. People now can build lasers in their garage that ultimately will fry a hole in somebody. At the very least, if you just gut them in the eye for a split second, they'd be totally blind. Well, they're not going to be fighting back effectively at that point. I can't remember the channel on YouTube, but there's this one kid, he builds his own lasers. And you wouldn't believe, like, he has to wear elaborate eye protection to keep himself from suffering eye damage, even though he's not even looking directly at it. Like, it's not even hitting him in the face. I can't even imagine the sheer pain if you did get hit with such a weapon. It'd probably be more effective than solid ordnance if it were just a bit more advanced. We're talking about laser interception systems and rail guns and the mother of all bombs and nuclear weapons, and people are worried about some pea shooter in somebody's garage, like they might just suddenly go apeshit. I'm not too worried about it. I trust my fellow citizens to own firearms. Felons, violent felons anyway, already can own them. A lot of the time they say, well, yeah, but we need to crack down so they can't get their hands on them. Well, good luck. You're not going to be able to figure out a system by which those guns can't be sold to anybody who happens to want to obtain them and has enough money to do so. It's not going to happen. It's simply never going to be feasible. Even if you support it on a moral basis, even if you're one of those people who's like, oh, but the Second Amendment's antiquated, let's just get rid of it. How are you going to disarm everybody? Millions of people would fight back. It would be a bloodbath. It would probably crush the United States altogether and probably lead to civil war. It wouldn't be pleasant. But these people, they're used to thinking that people with ideologies they don't like as subhuman. And so because of that, they don't really care if, a few million or tens of millions of people get slaughtered, including most of the U.S. military, which would be under heavy fire for probably some years thereafter. Probably wouldn't survive the encounter. And the military knows this, by the way. I'm sure that they have plenty of internal reports. Oh, the feasibility of disarming everybody. No, it is not feasible. We would not be able to run most of our weapons because we can't destroy our own economy. It's not like when you're fighting in a foreign theater and you're like, yeah, we got to destroy this city block. That's too bad. Destroy it. You can't really do that in a domestic engagement. Going to be a lot harder. Yeah, you'd need some severe reconstruction after that, and the lingering resentment would, it would probably cripple the United States. Hell, the Civil War nearly crippled the country too. The one we had back when you didn't have the kind of modern weapon systems that you have now. So it's just not going to happen. It's a bad idea. We're not an island. Other countries would sell guns to all the criminal groups within the country. And so you'd fail. There'd still be plenty of weapons here. It's just they'd be in exactly the hands that you want to remove them from if you have any semblance of sanity. There are better ways to go about it. Number one, it's called clear up the drug war. Then you can go after a lot of the illegal weapons and the gangs and stuff. You'd have so many more resources for it. Their proceeds would dry up. Some of them would go legit. They'd be like the Italian mafia. You know, at this point, they don't really whack each other in the streets anymore. They run a barber shop and cook the books or something. It's white-collar crime. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. They can certainly still have somebody killed if they want to. Oh, it's perfectly within their means. But they prefer not to. It attracts a little bit too much attention. It makes them a lot less money, I think they realize. Rather buy up a casino somewhere. That's about all. Peace out.